Wrecking Trade, the radio show that provides a platform for a deeper understanding of issues affecting men in the Cayman Islands. Join us as we explore the low enrollment of men and boys in college classrooms, the absence of men in the church, and the absence of fathers in the home. Join the conversation as we help men find their place in the modern world. Through engaging interviews with experts and members of the community, we provide a clear picture of what healthy masculinity looks like as an example for boys and girls. Our mission is to provide a voice for men, to help them navigate the challenges that they face and provide hope for a brighter future. So tune in and join the conversation on The Wrecking Trade. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of men and boys in the Cayman Islands. Welcome to The Wrecking Trade, the radio show that provides a platform for a deeper understanding.
Welcome one and all, and welcome to our listeners on Flashpoint Media, Flashpoint Radio. We dive deep into masculinity, male accountability, and responsibility here on The Wrecking Trade. So before we jump into today's discussion, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and let's aim for 5,000 subscribers. Together, we can do it. And of course, if this content resonates with you, do me a favor, just hit that like button for this video. It's not just a thumbs up, it is how we tell YouTube that the things that we talk about here matters. And so with that, let's get right into it. Today, we're exploring the question, why are men dying at such an alarming rate? And how this conversation actually came about is, and I should tell you that our producer today is Lady Ellie. So put your hands together for Lady Ellie, who is at the controls making all these things happen. And with me in studio, and this is where this conversation came from. As you know, yesterday, November 19, was International Men's Day, celebrated on a Sunday. But here in the Cayman Islands, usually when there's a big day that is celebrated on a Sunday, we recognized on a Monday, but it's been pretty quiet. So today, we are bringing back, today is International Men's Day right here on Flashpoint Media. And so myself and Mikey at the L, Mikey G, we're going to have a conversation that surrounds me. Now, we're going to talk about some things that we're actually talking on the show this morning, and one of those things actually came from one of the promotions for the International Men's Day program. Lady Ellie, can you run that promotion for us? Right. So while Lady Ellie's getting that going, right? Some things that I wanted to share with you. This conversation that we're having about men and about International Men's Day is very dear to my heart. But one of the things that we're also looking at as we're growing, as we're expanding, is we want to create a space for specifically for persons who want to think about improving their financial situation. Because one of the things that we're going to be talking about later today is what does it actually mean to be a man, and how do we get there? And so one of the things that we'll focus on this channel, which is called actually Money Matters 345. So go ahead and just find that on YouTube and just hit a subscribe, hit a subscribe over there, and maybe like the videos over there. Every day we drop tips on how you can become more financially aware, become more money savvy, and so we can actually build wealth. That's one of the things I personally found that I was lacking as I was growing up. I didn't really grow up understanding how to build wealth. One of the things that we understood, Mikey, was what we need to make ends meet. And so sometimes we get stuck with that mindset of making ends meet.
National Men's Day celebrates the love and protection men provide for their families and communities. Sadly, globally every year, 452,000 men commit suicide. The International Men's Day theme for 2023 is Zero Male Suicide. Almost twice as many men kill themselves compared to women. On average, in Western countries, for every one woman who commits suicide, tragically, 3 to 4 men take their own lives. Professor Dan Bilsker states that we're in the middle of a silent epidemic of male suicide. Dr. Rob Whitley says new male-friendly suicide prevention measures must be adopted to help halt the crisis. One suicide is one too many. Together we can work towards zero male suicide. Let's all work together to support men. Wish every man you meet a happy International Men's Day on November 19.
So wish every man you meet a happy Men's Day, International Men's Day on November 19th. But we're saying, let's extend that. Today, Monday is almost over, but let's just keep that going throughout the month of November, or as often as you can. Because what we found is that men are doing this at a more alarming rate, because guess what? for some reason, men are not finding a space, recourse. They're not necessarily finding the answers to so many of the questions that we're raising as men. And we're trying to explore that to just kind of understand what do you think has been happening, Mikey? What's putting men in this space where we have no hope? We just feel like we're just exiting the building.
Well, we could look at it from varying angles, Robert. We find that, you know, it is difficult for men to navigate through this muck that's going on, and that's what I'm gonna class it as muck.
Yes.
Because every day you get up, you hear that the men are worthless. It's like when I went to school, they said words, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words cannot harm me. A lie that was told to me and mean by the education system.
Yes.
We're educated in this nonsense, but then we realize now that these words are so powerful. But amongst that, or beyond that, is the mindset that is in place to basically, I would say, subdue men, or to keep them subdued, because now it's a new era, and now a new set of persons are in charge, and rightly so. We have been oppressed for so long, and so now we are going to make sure you never come back. You know, and so it feels that way, and it is being said in public spaces. It's been announced and pronounced everywhere you go. You can never not hear it. When Women's Day come around, I know when Mother's Day is around. I know when Women's Day is around, because I am the one who's saying it. Because all I know is because it's here. I'm hearing it everywhere. So I'm looking now to say. I don't have to look for it. I'm hearing it. When Mother's Day come around,
you hear it
everybody,
loud.
it's the biggest day alive around town. When Father's Day come around, the little half-dead daddy there, the one them who are sperm donors, and it list goes on, right?
And my favorite annoyance, my mother who fathered me.
No, that one was the one that kicked me in the belly when I first heard that one. I started giving. I was in Spanish Town. I was working in Spanish Town at the time, somewhere around in the 90s, because that's when the book came out, and it was a popular book amongst the faculty, the staff at the institution that I was working at the time, and it was an education institution. So, you know, they loved it, and it was mostly female dominated environment based on that. And so they brought the book in, and they need to read this book, and it was introducing the book and telling everybody to get this book. I said, that's the nonsense right there. I was a much younger man then, and I knew it was rubbish. And I started saying there's no possibility for a woman to father a child. Right?
And this is that space where we kind of veer over into each other's lanes. We go, my mother who fathered me, and then seemingly we're veering over into the lane where we're expecting men to mother children, and so we create confusion.
So I said, listen. So we're in an education system, and so, you know, I end up in a position of being disciplined, having to deal with discipline in the school at the time. And so at that time, corporal punishment was the normal thing. It wasn't something that now is standing in the corner and time out, take away a tablet, and, you know, children, you know what consequence to action was.
You just go to the office and you get your caning.
And then I didn't know why they came. I didn't want to know why. It was just that you came for that, and the teacher must send it down here for a reason. Now, I believe that there is still a place for it. Because I watched a video earlier on where a young lady, not a child, a young lady, a young adult. A teacher was at the board teaching, writing down some question and putting a problem on the board, and you see a shoe switch across to the teacher, and then this young lady threw the shoe over there and almost hit the teacher, and I had her feet on the desk at the same time, and the teacher came and said, "Who threw the shoe at me?" And clearly she identified that you're the one who did it, and said, "I didn't throw the shoe," and her foot she didn't have on any shoe on the one foot, and it was on the desk. That's clearly to show that I am the one who did it. And she's saying to the teacher, "I am not the one who did it." And and then when that went on for a while, the teacher started talking, and she said, "What can you do?" Now, in my time, that would not be a situation that somebody could ask that, because the next action will be clearly, it will be
something would happen.
It will be happening, and you wouldn't have to get the police to come to then remove her from the class. The teacher, who would be the authority
in the classroom,
would be able to touch her, take her out of the seat, and let her exit the room. You don't have to probably spank her because she didn't do anything to do anything. Just
but you have the authority in the space to do what needed to be done.
Now children know that they are untouchable, and we taught them so. Now, so we said that fathering as a male teacher versus a female teacher is two different dynamics.
And before you jump on, just to kind of navigate, because you kind of struck a chord there, in that in many of the spaces that normally held the lines, we still give those persons the responsibility to do the things, to educate, to teach, to train, but without the authority. We've removed the authority, and so we've removed consequences from these situations. And I mean, it is not far-fetched to see, okay, if we remove accountability, we remove consequences, then when a young person does something, then there's no corrective measure to help them to understand what the world is really like.
Well, we stopped corporal punishment because we say it was abuse to the children. But then what we found right after that, and people will want to say I'm not saying the truth, but then I've seen the statistics about what people are talking about now, and I know that those things are not even real, not even making any sense. We have seen a rise in criminality, crime, and young people being more boisterous or even violent within the school environment more than any other time else. And people would chalk it up to being the signs of a time that we are living in. But what we have done, the persons who benefited from corporal punishment are from this, not abuse, guys, because I believe that the Bible teaches that don't spare the rod and spoil the child. And it means literally what a rod is. When the Bible was talking those days, it didn't have computers and timeouts. It talks about that piece of stick or a belt or something that would be used to administer if it is necessary. It's not every time. Let me just bring out a disclaimer quickly. I believe that, I always say this, a carpenter have many tools in his toolbox.
That's right.
And so there's a screwdriver, there's a hammer, there is a pliers, and there is maybe a chisel or maybe a clipper, something. But then every time when you need to drive a nail, you're going to need a hammer to drive the nail. And so while every situation is not a nail, you don't need the hammer.
For every situation. And I love the analogy, because one of the things that a carpenter does is he makes himself fully aware of what needs to be done in his profession. So he educates himself, he learns, he goes through some kind of an apprentice system where he understands the nature of wood, he understands the nature of nails, he understands the nature of the hammer, he understands the nature of the screwdriver, and so he knows how to use these things appropriately. Because one of the counter arguments many persons use to the corporal punishment idea is if you treat every situation like a nail, then you're going to also be in error, and rightly so. And just like you said,
you're gonna be using a hammer all the time, which is not necessary.
Which is not necessary.
And for that one, Robert, is to say that when we look at the broad spectrum of how things, the dynamics have shifted, what we do is this: if somebody, if you're in a situation where you have a room filled with all men or people, generally, it doesn't mean men or women, it doesn't matter. Anybody rises to the front to take charge, it's going to be the leader.
Yes.
And so one of the ways to not be the leader is to say, I don't want to be. Right? Or somebody come in and say, none of the men in this room will be the leader.
Somebody just puts a legislation.
So
all men are excluded from leadership.
Now, who is excluded from leadership is all the teachers. They are not. They don't have the responsibility to lead anywhere.
They are not the leaders in the classroom. They don't have the authority.
They don't have the authority because they don't have the authority. The parents, they are not leaders in their homes because by trying to do corporal punishment or even try to scold their children, the police can be called in and the child knows it for any reason, and then there have been problems, and then so it limits them.
Yes.
And so they have removed leadership from the two main important places that leadership should be. And we're not talking about leadership, we're talking about masculinity, we're talking about men, we're talking about men's day and men's health, and of course why men are doing all this. But to bring this conversation here and to just bring a sort of like a context to it, is to say that when you remove the authority from the parent and the teachers, you have given the strap. Let's use this then. You have taken the rod from the parent and the teachers, and so you have given it to the students or the children.
And now to contextual, to bring it into focus, what you're saying here, the shepherd always has the rod.
Yes, but
and
not
so
to
he
beat.
can, but not to beat. The shepherd always has the rod,
Yes, it's
and so
correct.
he's guiding the sheep, right?
Yes,
But when you
necessary.
remove that staff
Yes.
from the shepherd's hand, you remove his authority, and so now you may lead the shepherd to start questioning himself,
He's unable.
and the sheep, to start looking into all different kinds of direction for leadership,
Yes.
causing confusion. So a young person who's in the classroom or even in the home, and they're thinking, who am I supposed to be? Teacher can't talk to me, so teacher can't tell me what I need to be.
No.
Daddy can't talk to me, so daddy can't tell me what I'm supposed to be.
Here's a scenario for you. Here's a scenario for you. Here's the cops on the street, right? And the arguments that they place on corporal punishment to take it out of the classroom to make our children so obnoxious. And parents know, you know, the parents, I've seen parents come to school and disrespect teachers in front of their child or children that they have and think it is all right. Now, I am in the classroom and I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you the truth. I would never condone a parent coming to disrespect me. And I don't think you're tall enough. You know, you're 6'10". You're not tall enough for me. And you're not going to do that in front of your child, in front of me, and do that. So that's the first rule for me. Never to have a conversation with a child in the room with me having a conversation. I'm not discussing anything in front of children. If you want to talk to me about something that my conduct with your child, then let us talk about why your child got consequence to an action. Let's talk about that. And then when we have the conversation, then you can bring in the child to scold the child again if you feel I must.
I remember when I was growing up, if you
Yeah.
were out of line with a teacher, you know, let me correct that. You didn't want to be out of line with a teacher,
No.
because the parent, the home, and the school
Was
were
in one.
in
In
one.
one accord, yes.
So if the teacher sent home a bad report about you,
Right.
you're going to have a conversation with the parents. So if the teacher sent home a bad report that said you used certain words or you were talking out of turn,
Right.
some things needed to happen at home. So you
Right.
wanted to be at your best behavior at school, so that didn't get home, because there was union there, and so that authority was maintained. But when you remove that authority from the school,
Right.
and then you also remove it from the home,
Right.
then how do you teach young people, how do you teach men, women, children all around to respect the police?
Well, let's go with it. Let's go with the scenario now. So here is where it gets tricky. So they say that it's abuse, and so it is, you have to remove it from everybody, because the abuse is everywhere. The children are being abused by the parents, and which in if you check the statistics, nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, there are people
Bad
who
actors.
actually were abusing children. Yes, it was visibly seen. But let me bring this to you. It was visibly seen that there were abuse going on.
Yes.
By teachers.
Yes.
And also by parents.
Yes.
All right. So let me just stop that there, and I'm going to bring something to you. So there are policemen. All of them have firearms. Not in Cayman, but
No,
in other
before you
parts-
before
in
you
other-
move
in
on,
other
before you
part-
move on.
Let me say this.
All
Let me
right,
say
say
this
it.
quickly. It's a correlation to the same thing. It's to just bring the point together. And so the policeman wears his weapon, and so he shoots somebody. All right, and then this person was innocent when he shot him, or her, whichever way it goes. But then does the government goes around and take away all the policemen gun, right? And so they didn't do that, and there are many police shootings and incidents that are illegally done and just lawless, right? But never you see that a wide scale mass protest went out to take away the guns from the police. No, what they did was they prosecuted those who were in violation. No. And did something to curtail the amount of persons who would decide to unload by putting on body cameras or whatever methods they use. Now, this method was not employed to the education system. And so now that you have allowed our children to become wilder than deer and worse than anything else you can find and be disrespectful to the adults more than any other time else, you are now blaming the teachers for being
Inadequate.
Inadequate.
Parents
And
for being
parents for being
inadequate.
When you take away authority from the parents and then put it in the children's hand, and the children are now beating the parents, literally beating parents and beating teachers. So the teachers now are not safe in the classroom anymore because the children knows that they have the authority over them. And so they're like those puppets in the classroom. And that's a very disrespectful place to be. You can't pay me enough money to sit in front of none of these young people to be disrespected like that at any point.
And that becomes an unfortunate situation.
I never do that.
That becomes an unfortunate situation where qualified persons are now, rather than aligning themselves with a highest aspiration to be able to help mold young minds, are now worried for their own safety and saying, hey, I don't think this teacher thing is going to work out because I'm afraid. And so fear now perpetuates itself. And I want to double underline the thing that you said, in that when we're removing authority from these situations, from parents, from teachers, from educators, because you have some bad actors, and imagine in all things you have bad actors, but you go across the board, we're removing this authority from you. Then the natural outcome is that now these persons are going to be handicapped. They're going to be hampered in the execution of their duties. And so when we're seeing prison populations on the rise, when we're seeing murders on the rise, when we're seeing death on the rise, we're seeing, one, lawlessness on the rise. And then to bring it back to tonight's conversation, we're seeing hopelessness.
Let's look at the home.
On the rise.
Let's look at the home. Here's the home where this young lady or young man grabs his stuff. Mommy just talked to him. Daddy just talked to him or her. And just went into the room, go into the room and slam the door shut. You know, I have a drill set in my car.
Yeah. That's immediately what came to mind. There's no door anymore.
I have a drill set in my car. And if my child ever thought it in their mind that they could do something like that, I'm going to take off the door first. So now you're not going to have any privacy. Secondly, you're going to realize that you're not going to be able to sit down properly. Anywhere or where you are sitting down, it's not going to be easy to really lie there easy. In fact, you're going to be lying there wondering which side to lay on first for doing something like that because you're so disrespectful. You need to be addressed immediately. And then after that, when you come back, you come apologize to your mother or to me.
Or both, for disrespecting the host.
For disrespecting the home. Right there.
And it's worth it's worth looking at, because here's the thing. As a society, we haven't said that actions don't have consequences, because we still have prisons.
Yeah.
And we still have the death penalty in many places, right? And so we are saying that actions have consequences, but here's the thing. We're removing those consequences from the training ground.
Yes. And
then unleashing these persons on the society where the consequences become so much higher.
The unfortunate thing is, Ella Roberts, is this. Let me tell you something. When you look at it, when you look at what's next on the scale of 1 to 10, here's your child that could have been, and I've got quite a few youngsters who are very boisterous. I worked in West Kingston for a while. It's a very volatile area. And I would have seen young men, young men come to me who, would have been the ones who would never be seeing the light of day. More likely, prison would be the first place that they would stop after leaving school, if they're lucky to leave school in time. Right? I would come back and tear would be in their eyes. A tear would be in their eye to say, sir, thank you. And the thanks that he's given me is the fight that I will be fighting with them to maintain being a young man and to understand what it means. And that it is important to finish your education and to have something, a reason to live. Here is the situation. Many of those young people, and I've seen it with my own eyes, by not teaching consequences to them, the police will shoot them eventually. And so the amount of young people, young men, and this is where I'm going now. The amount of young men, not the young ladies, because when the young ladies are in disrespectful mode, the next thing they're going to get pregnant. That's the amount of it. They're going to get pregnant. They're going to bring another child into the world, which they would have been a little brat growing up and teach a child how to be a brat too.
And then fatherless homes, and then that leads to criminality. Then,
we're just looking at the young men now, where the young men are disadvantaged.
Yes.
And so they are now let loose on the society.
And that's what we want to dig into. And I love that you spoke to it from the teacher position and that young man coming back to you.
Yes.
Because those are the stories that we want to dig into. Yeah, we understand the anger and we understand all the things. But then there are young men who need to have those boundaries. The society needs to have those boundaries. And those young men are telling you that they are appreciating. And we want to dig right back into that right after this break. As Lady L takes us into the break.
You know, Ella Rob, what I'd say is, I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. I think we're getting into the breaks but shortly, but I don't want to tell the story now. But the preamble of it is still related to in the classroom, and it's very important. Education, that nurturing period, that initial stage of development, getting them out from the primary levels, high school levels, and they're not college material yet, or they will never probably go to college, but getting them to be in the world where there are now young men and young women who will need jobs. So those who will never go college, they're going to still need jobs.
Yes.
And I want to tell you a story about a young man who came to me at a certain time.
But and those jobs will still have hierarchies, and well, those will still have orders.
I just want to tell you that one, right?
So much killing. Won't stop now. Prophecies. Let your blessings come over, yeah. If everybody in this world could just fear God, just hear God and try to get near God. I read God a letter, I said, dear God, please show me where to go and I'll be there, God. Show me how the dragons have to bear, God. Whether they are far or they are near, God. Whether they're in single or in pair, God. I slew them with your words like a spear, God. You feed the multitude with fish and bread, God. And rise up as I rose from the dead, God. You free Daniel from the dead, God. Your judgment gonna be here again, God. You reveal things to the woman at the well, God. She repents, she doesn't wanna go to hell, God. If you have a problem, just kneel down and tell God. If everybody could just do what you said, God. Oh, what a wonderful world this would be. What a beautiful world, a wonderful world. What a wonderful world this would be. What a beautiful world this would be. A wonderful world this would be. If God gets all the praises from you, and all these praises from me, what a wonderful world Christ would see. Alright, it's gonna be a day when fire gonna burn, Lord. For the wicked, there is no place to run, Lord. Man, I go run to the rock, I go run, God. Them time the mercy days already done, God. Stars remember your people on this ground, Lord. Please let some blessing come down, Lord. Please put words of praise upon our tongues, God. If all these people just fear God, what a wonderful world this would be. What a beautiful world, a wonderful world. What a wonderful world this would be. What a beautiful world this would be. A wonderful world this would be. If God gets all the praise.
Wonderful, wonderful, what a wonderful world this would be. And it's interesting because that's what we're talking about here. God in his wisdom designed a plan, set in motion a design that he thought made sense, that he thought was useful, not just for the benefit in the home, but the benefit in our communities and the benefits in our societies. And we as a society said, hey, you know what? We know better. These things don't make any sense. Fathers, we don't need you in the home as much. Children can raise themselves, and women, you can just go out and do whatever you want to do. I mean, no one needs to have any roles or responsibilities. Let's just shake things up and see what happens. Sounds like the Big Bang Theory, right? But here, what we're seeing is, with this shake up and see what happens, we are seeing the outcomes. And if you are not as happy with the outcomes, then you should start asking yourself the question, all right, yes, I've been doing this thing that society has been telling me to do for this time, and I'm not seeing it work. Let's try something now. Let's get back to the basics. Let's get back to the design, and let's figure out, let's explore what's going on. Because tonight we're talking about what is happening to men. We've talked about the fact that men are killing themselves at twice or 3 times the rate as women. And what we haven't talked about, and that's just on average. Now, when a man experiences a divorce, that number gets multiplied by an additional 2.4. So we're talking about a whole host of things. And then when we go through the divorce, that father that ends his own life, those children are growing up without fathers, those young men are growing up without fathers, growing up in fathers' homes. We understand that the pipeline brings them towards criminality. The pipeline brings them towards, rebellion. And the world continues down a negative spiral. Let's arrest it. Mikey, you were telling us before the break that you were arresting that very action, talking to young men and saving them.
I want to say this quickly because here's graduation time.
Yes.
For some of these youngsters, right? And when it's time, or not even graduation time, it's not graduation time yet. These are youngsters now who are now being set up for CXC time, and they are saying these can't take CXC. These aren't the ones who will take CXC. And of course, I would have a mixture of young men and ladies in the same breath. But I have a greater amount of young men to deal with. And here they are now going back after meeting me, going back into the environment that they're coming from. That would be most predominantly women teachers who would be at that section that they will be learning from. So the 99% women schools that you exist with the 1% or maybe 2%, maybe less than
male
5,
teachers,
less than 5% male teachers. I'd be one of them, one of those within the school environment. That would when the youngsters go back, they're like, but how did you get them to behave? There's a difference between female teachers and male teachers. The trick is now and this is how it worked. When you understand who you are as a man, then the children who sees you understand that they are in front. They know they are in the presence of a male. What we have seen now is a lot of effeminate males that behave more like women than the women themselves, and so the youngsters, the boys, are confused. So I would just drop that in there as a little nugget, right?
And to kind of explore it, because sometimes you say these things and you're being masochistic, or you're being demeaning to men. And so what we want to recognize is, in these situations, we understand that a narrative has been shared, has been spun, has been said. That we were told as we were growing up. I was told growing up, hey, men need to access more of their feminine side, or connect with more of their emotions, and essentially leaning away from what was considered to be typical masculinity and lean more towards femininity. And so as we're seeing those things play out, we're seeing a difference in how children are responding to these situations, and we're seeing different outcomes. And so again, going back to what we talked about, if God said something, he designed something to be a particular way.
I'd say this quickly as you raise that point, Elora. I'd say this to you quickly. That I would want to tell our ladies, or say this to our ladies. You do not like to see, I'm going to say it like this. You do not like to see your man crying in front of you. The first time may be all right. The next time he comes, you're like, what's going on with this fellow? And the third time, you are now saying, why is he crying all the time? Now, you know you have a weak man at home right away. And so
hold on.
Let me say it. You know you have a weak man at home right away. That's the woman's thinking this, because in her mind, why is he crying all the time? And she's saying this, But then what she's actually calibrating for is to say, I want a strong man, one who, when there's problems, he will not be seemingly like he won't be able to manage. And she's now certain that the man who's seemingly crying all the time is not that man who's going to face that fight.
And so this is what I wanted to throw in there, because sometimes what I found from having these conversations, talking to women on the show and just talking to women in real life, sometimes they don't actually know, or they're not able to articulate, express that I have a weak man, There's something that is happening that is at odds with how she's feeling. Because remember, she's been asking the man to be more emotional, to share that. And we had a show a couple of weeks ago, and even Sister Lisa came in and she jumped in. Yes, man, I want a man who will cry and whatnot. But then, as you're saying, the more you're seeing it, something else is happening inside. Something else is happening inside, and you're reacting to it in a particular way. And in many cases, we're not understanding what is happening. And so, what that is that original programming is coming out, and it is at odds with the new 20th century programming that you say, yes, man, you need to be independent, you need to be a boss, you need to be in charge, you need to be all of these things, and the man needs to be softer and whatnot. And it is at odds with your internals, because I was having a conversation with someone today, with a young lady today, and I shared this idea, and the idea was this: when a woman is laying in bed with a man, they can use the exact same words to express an emotion, and it has a very different reaction, a very different impact internally. When a woman leans over to a man and says, baby, I'm scared, that pours into him and gives him superpowers and says, I now need to protect her. Right? Activate. Superpowers activated. Super Mario Brothers is out right now, so it gives him a power up. Now, the reverse, when that man turns to that woman and says, baby, I'm scared, it doesn't give her superpowers. Just like you said, it somehow causes her, one, confusion. And then two, it causes her a problem, because now she's saying, then that means I have to take care of myself.
Yes. The first question would come to her mind is, what is he good for?
Again.
First question, it comes to her mind. What's this? What is this? You know, for what I have experienced over my time, and I would say that I would have a wealth of that. And I've seen lots of stuff, lots of things. I've seen violence.
And I want to come back to the young men, right? But let me throw this in. And again, we're not attacking the men who are finding themselves in this situation, or even attacking the women who are finding themselves in the masculine situation, you know.
That's what I wanted. That's what I want to address when I say the effeminate men.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing I said in terms of saying that the men are more effeminate. No, because we are listening to the conversation that men should be leaning into their feminine side, right? Now, every woman wants a good man.
Yes.
And she wants a man who is strong, a man who is a protector, a man who is all the things that she wants. But then what we have looked at over the years, Robert, is the narrative. When I was growing up, I just quick this one, I would look nice in an earring. I knew when this, and I was like maybe 14, 15 at the time. I knew that's not something that I would want to see me look, because I knew right away that only women
wore earrings.
Now the narrative came out, and this was when we are talking about people like Prince and these guys were the role models, and people want to quickly dismiss the artists or singers or movie stars that they influence on the society, that they are not that influenced. They want to say no, it's not so. Music don't carry that weight, and the nonsense that you sing is not true. But yet still, if you should sell, if you put an ad for 30 seconds, Grey's Tomato Ketchup, it sell $1 million in a week, and you have a 4-minute song that does the same thing, and you're saying it didn't do anything to you. That speaks about crime, violence, rape, and murder,
and glorifies these things,
demons and everything, and didn't do anything to you. You're crazy, right? But anyways, going back to our men
and boys in the schools,
and boys within the schools, and how we see. They are being there. First thing, they are in schools, and they have 95% women teaching them. The principal is a woman.
Yes.
So what you're looking at is the children, the man child is seeing women as the authority over them.
Yes. And
so here's a kicker for everybody. What you want is when the man child grows up to be the fully grown man child. He is seeing the woman as the authority. He doesn't understand himself. He didn't come into himself fully.
He saw only his mother in the household as the authority. He went to school and saw only teachers as women, and principal as women.
Right. And so when they see these things, what they do, they come up and feeling inferior. Right. Now that inferior complex, we might not say it is there and it's not real because we think it's not so. But if you look at the black child and the white child, I'm going to split it right there in the middle. Here is a black man and his wife working in a white home who have the money, and the little child is like 5 years old, comes out, and the black man, who's an elderly man, have to say, "Good morning, Mr. So-and-so," to the 5-year-old. The little boy who's a black child must say also the same thing to the 5-year-old. What does that do to the black child? It makes him feel inferior to that child immediately. Immediately, that child is feeling superior, and he knows he's superior because he has what it takes to be superior, because these people must bow to him. Now, you're looking at men being trained in this way for years and decades to come, and will continue for a while. And we want men to be that ultimate battlefield warrior, but yet still you train him in an environment with ice cream and fudge, and try to not give him the tools that he needs to work with. One thing.
It's interesting that you frame it in that way, you know,
Yes.
because around the world there's a lot of conversation about the impact of racial inequality and why we need to have diversity in these situations, because we have these marginalized groups, and because they're seeing things in a particular way, they're going to be disadvantaged. But we don't apply the same thing when it comes to the male-female dynamics. We think, okay, fine,
no, it's
yeah,
not.
it impacts
not.
them there completely, yes, but it doesn't impact them for boys to grow up seeing only females in leadership, for them to be in their homes and only seeing females in leadership, and then trying to figure out their place in the world in that landscape.
Mothers, we have a thing in the church teaches this. Our church teaches this thing. And the Bible teaches. The woman should teach the woman. It's a very important thing. What does the woman teach the women? How to be wives. The fathers teach the men child how to be men. The mothers, who would be the nurturers of the family, also reinforce what the man child should be.
Because they see that dynamic between mother and father.
But because what societal norm was and is now is two different things.
Yes.
So we want to not teach men different from women. I would say that every school that don't have a technical is not a technical school, is not designed for a man. I would say that right off the bat. Why would I say that? I believe that every man must have the skills of a handyman. He must be able to do something around his house. And I understand the dynamics. I'm a doctor, and of course I'm one of those most, professor and all that. And if your nail break, you're like, "Oh my darling, my nail is broken. I need to go to I need to go get a manicure." Yeah, I'm not impressed with you at all. I would say to you that I believe men should be men, regardless of what job you hold. And so there's a thing in the schools that they are having in the school. It's called R&T. I don't know if it's still there. Back in the day, R&T brings all the students, whether female or male, in all the areas of vocation, for them to be able to be exposed to different aspects of it, so they could choose which vocation they want. It doesn't mean that they have to choose to be a carpenter or a mason or a cook or a chef or whatever.
But even as you're exploring your academic side, you have a practical skill in your pocket.
To all of these things. Now, understanding that brings me to where, if there's no men in the home to teach the man-child how to be a man,
where does he learn it?
Where does he learn it
And
from?
what is he learning?
And what is he learning, right? And this is where we're going with it. So the school has failed. The home. And
it's crippled.
Let's go with it. Let's go with it from the home.
The home is crippled.
So let's go with it from the
and
school. Let's go with it from the school,
Uh-huh.
because the education system is where all of this nonsense begins. We can't say it starts from the home anymore, because the home was reversed of the principles by the education system.
One second there.
Let me go with it.
Unpack it.
Let me go with it. Let me go with it. Here it is, that the society that we had before. This is where we stand. What are we learning in schools today? Are we teaching same sex in the homes? Are we teaching that our young ladies and our little boys and our little girls can be boys and girls, whichever one in the home? Are we doing that in the home? Or is it happening in the schools?
So here's
I want to bring the correlation between the masculinity and this thing that's going on.
So here's where I'm still trying to figure out and trying to understand what is happening, right? Because certainly, and one of the things that I'm very aware of is that legislation comes from the government and it goes
Very
through the
good.
schools and then it
Very
filters
good.
through. And so
Very
there are some
good.
things that will come into
Very
our school
good.
systems
Very good.
that as parents we may not be in agreement with. As conscientious parents, we may not necessarily be in agreement with. But guess what? Because we're so busy working and doing all these other things, we don't know. But I'm also very aware
Yes.
of this medium that we're on is also in our homes, and sometimes again because we're so busy, so distracted doing other things, we've forgotten our roles. We're so busy chasing the almighty dollar that our children are being raised by the YouTubes and raised by the TikToks and all those other things too. So there's a dual attack
So we are going
on the families and on the homes.
So we are going to the school
Yes.
system that is overturning the authority of the home.
Okay.
So what they did was they used the schools to re-educate the kids. So here are the children now. So I'm a strong parent who have taught my kids, right? But then my children are going to school.
Yes.
And when they go to school, they come back with a different idea. Now, the ideas are filtering in slowly. It's a little by little.
Little by
It's-
little.
it's-
They get a little bit
they're
in primary
little
school.
by-
They
you're
get a
right.
little bit in high school,
school.
and even more into college.
And then when it comes out, and then by the time the child comes out and being an adult, they are fully, because there's a time when you don't have that control over them anymore.
At all.
By teenagers, they are now what you call.
You can't talk to them.
you
They,
can't
their
talk to them.
tattoos,
They're-
belly
they're-
piercings,
they're-
and
they're
they're
doing their
changing their genders and doing a whole bunch
I
of
know the
things.
school is now having the full authority to continue the education system. Now, you're filtering these children out over time. If you want to reculture a society and to change the narrative of what people will do, say, will do over time, well, will do. All you need to do that, if you want to reculture a society, to do something else, to be an opposite. If we were singing, God give us strength this week, and to say, Satan give us strength afterwards, all we need is time.
Time.
All we need is time. All right. So the time that our children are going to school over time, they have been learning some stuff that we're not supposed to be learning, and so they have been taught these things. Now here we have the children now growing up, and the same set of kids are the ones now who are parents. Now they have lost the values that they were taught, because now they are making decisions to say, let's take out corporal punishment out of school. Let's remove the very thing that saved me. And I'll go back to the corporal punishment right there. I'm going to go back to the story quickly.
And so here we set up a situation where
Yes.
we saw something that worked, but we didn't like one thing about it.
Yes. I felt some pain. I
felt
was
some
rude.
pain.
I was rude, and so I got
Slapped,
a slapping,
and I didn't like that.
I didn't like it, so I'm not going to let my child get
Slapped at all.
No.
And I didn't like how the teacher talked to them at school
Right.
that one time. And so I don't want the teacher to talk to them at all.
At all, right?
And so we remove these guardrails. And you know, let's go above and beyond. Let's say, and you know what? There's some bad teachers doing some horrible things. No,
Of course.
there was a bad teacher doing a horrible
course.
thing. That person should
Of
have
course.
been in the school
Of
system.
course.
And because of that one person or two persons, let's even call them three. We say, you know what? Let's remove all power from all teachers altogether. And we have some horrible parents out there that shouldn't have been granted their right to be parents. And they did some horrible things. And we said, you know what? Let us start causing parents to live in fear so that they don't guide, train, teach, discipline their children anymore. What are we left with?
Well, you're left with the children now disciplining the parents.
We're left with children disciplining parents, but children don't have the knowledge.
That's what
They
I'm
don't have
saying.
the base
That's what I'm
to
saying.
accomplish this successfully.
The children are now disciplining the parents, and then the result of that, look at the system that we are looking at now with crime. We transition that into crime and violence right away, because now our children, because they now find themselves in the authority of beating the parents, they now transition into being the masters of us all. Our children shall be our masters.
And I want to hasten to say this, because I
this
want to
point.
say, listen, you see, when I was a teenager, I knew everything, I was right about everything. You couldn't tell me anything. And so I understand the mindset of young people, having not been trained, having not had the experience, but feeling like they should be in charge. Right? And so here, when we as adults, as grown persons, as persons who've been through that, we then co-sign that and say, well, you're right. and we turn the reins over to them, then we have error. And I wanted to set it up against our statistics, because we understand for children under 25, for young people under 25, you know, guess what we do? For car insurance, we charge them an exorbitant car insurance rate. Why? Because we know that they're prone to make mistakes and cause accidents. So we use that as a guardrail. But when it comes to their gender, when it comes to their self-determination, we said, hey, you can't control a car safely, but you can determine your own gender and your own space and how your brain is going to develop. And you can even tell us who've been through experiences what to do.
But
how is that so upset?
It is a ridiculous space to be right now. That it is beyond anything else. When we find, we talked earlier about the disparity between men, children, the women who also are the carers of our children. I'd make the statement: the hands that rock the cradle
rule the world.
It rules the world. And because of this rocking of cradle, when we ask the question, when the men that are coming out are simply inadequate, inefficient, and are unable to do the things that they're supposed to do, who taught these men? What will they teach? And what will they... Right. We wanted to talk about the young ladies who want these young men. And they're saying there are no good men around. But in saying no good men are around, is to say that the men that were taught how not to be men are the ones that you have to choose from. And then by picking from that stock that is not understanding who they are, they are also searching for themselves. They're lost in themselves. And when you can't find yourself, it's a difficult point of you being a leader. What and how will you lead?
And so,
how can you lead?
So as we navigate the final stretch, I mean, it's good that we're bringing it into focus here, because this is where it lives. If you run a manufacturing plant and you're building phones by the specs that you have designed, right? And you've said, this is how I want to build phones, and you've set it, and you've gone through the production. And when the phones come off the production line, you unanimously look at the phones and go, these are all rubbish.
I want to say this, Elder.
What are we... I want us to marinate on that a little bit, because here's the thing. If we're looking at the production line that we've created, we're looking at the pipeline that we've said and said, hey, this is what we're making. But when these things come out, we're saying, but this is rubbish. But we have had a hand in creating this thing that we're calling rubbish.
You know what I come to realize? And I'm going to just put it, I'm going to put this as a big blanket statement right now. Women, you are not at fault. I'm gonna say it right now.
And that's it. That's it.
I'm gonna go. Listen.
It's not about blaming the women or blaming the... Say it again.
Let me say this. I want to say, women, Mikey G, I'm going to say you are not at fault. And I'm going to tell you why. I said it earlier today. This was a conversation that we're having. Or women are not to be blamed.
No. Because they're in the same manufacturing line as well.
No, but the trick is, they were the first ones that got work done first. Let's do this. Here's the Garden of Eden. I always like to do this.
Yes.
Let's go to the Garden of Eden quickly. Here is the serpent sizzling around, right? Going around. And so here's the serpent going on. We love to see this. But we sometimes fail to see the dynamics of our women failing. Our women don't understand. And I will say this right now. Without fear or favor, I'm sympathetic.
Yes. They have been deceived as Eve was deceived.
Let's do it. Let's show you. Because we're talking here and the women are... I see the old ladies' faces. And I know you're hating me and you're hating Robert right now because you're just talking against the woman.
But no.
Let me share this. I want to tell you right now that when we talk about this, we want to show you your role in how you have been used. And then now to show you where the using starts. and how much you need more than ever to break yourself from that
Out of the deception.
from that deception and that stronghold that is holding you hostage to a thinking, a thought process, a line of thinking, and
that is not serving you or the community or the society.
Well, this is one wrecking trade moment that will wake up our women this evening. We need our women to wake up.
Yes.
And so here we're going to go back to the Garden of Eden quickly. So here's Eve. No, let's not use the word Eve, because Eve didn't come up until Genesis chapter 3, right? So let's leave that. The woman, Adam named her woman, and she was beautiful, and of course he loved her. And then, by design, we wanted to put this as a disclaimer that when this creation story, and this is for those who believe that the Bible is true, all right? If those who don't believe the Bible, throw it away, don't worry about it, and just go on thinking all the things that you want to think. And
no man. So even in fiction books, you know, because let me say this, because we watch Lord of the Rings and we watch all these movies and we take these lessons for them. So whatever your connection to the Bible is, here's a lesson.
For those who don't want to take any lessons, this is not for you. Just do that disclaimer. It's not for you. It's not for you. Because you're not using the Bible as your template. Whatever you're using is not the Bible.
If you want to stay in the if they want to stay in the line.
Yeah. But then here's the story, because these people who are Christians believe that they are thinking about using the Bible as their template. Then this is what they believe.
Okay.
So if you're not along one of those persons, and you are not in a group of people who would want to use the Bible as your standard, because everything that we do comes from a point of reference.
Yes.
We must reference it. You can't just come up with a storyline and tell me something that makes sense and don't have a reference point to say it originated from here.
Got you.
So here's where we come up with our original thinking to say that our original thought comes from the story of the Bible and the Garden of Eden experience.
And
that
so
says,
here is the
man
woman
being made,
sitting down.
and here is the woman
being
made. And woman, when the creation story went on, she was created for man. That's it. And so everybody will want to say, oh, created for who? No, she was created specifically because the man had a need. Right? So, no.
Listen. Hold on. And right there is where you might get some stoning. But here's the thing. Again, to the point that you made, this, if you believe that this is the reference book that you're using, then it's in the book. Don't stone Mikey, stone the book. All right. Stone the man who wrote the book.
I did not make it up. This is my statement every time I make up this.
The man was placed in the garden. He was given a job. Yes. He was given some things to do. He was taught. And then the Bible says, what? It is not good for man to be alone. And so it is not good for man to be alone. So guess what I'm going to make? I'm going to make something to solve that problem.
Here's where I would give it. It's only a sinful mind that could see an evil in this design. Only a sinful mind could see that. Only a sinful mind could see that when you find yourself with a man, that you were not made for him. Only a sinful mind.
And I want us to come back in, because I want you to get to the place that says, hey, you know what? Listen, I want us to underscore and help women to appreciate that. Guess what? We're not blaming you.
No, you're not. So here's where we're not blaming the woman now. Here's the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Here is Adam and the woman. Have you ever, Ella Robert, seen that snake talking to the man at any point?
I don't see it. I'm looking through.
Let me ask you a question.
If you're on the chat and you see some place in the record that the serpent is having a conversation with the man,
at any point,
send it to us. Let us know.
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a quick question. Have you ever you left your wife alone for a little bit, and there's a man there talking to her, and when you're coming up towards her, you say, all right, here I'm gone. Have you ever seen that?
Right?
Have you ever seen that?
And what are the implications of that? What is going on there?
Have you ever seen it? You ever seen it? You know, once you're chatting her up, you know, and he's, you know, baby, you look so nice, you know, well, I didn't hear the story, right? But here he's talking up, and as soon as you see her come, he say, yeah, you know what, I soon come back, I'm gone, right? He disappears.
Yes.
Here is Adam in the garden, and the woman is right there, and the serpent, come here, call her over, and she was there talking to him the whole time. At no point did that serpent approach Adam. At never you see that. But she was always clinging to listen to what he has to say. And so when we look at our women, we realize how vulnerable our women are when left alone, how dangerous it is for our women, because the enemy is always trying to attack our women. All right. So here we have a movement that
mark that there, because a woman may be listening and she was triggered by the first part of what you said and saying, hey, what do you mean you can't leave me alone? But the message and the power, the message and the power of that is, guess what? That means, young lady, that means woman, that means female, guess what? You are under attack.
Yes.
You are being sought by the devil. That means something. That means something, you know. If you're under attack, that means there's a power there that the devil wants to take away from you.
Let's look at this, please. Let's look at this, Robert. Let's look at this quickly. This is a perfect woman.
Yes.
This is a woman who never.
Adam just said, "Whoa, woman."
This is a woman that has no sin at all. Perfect woman. And the devil could deceive her. These are imperfect women.
Without trauma.
She never
without history.
She never had no history, no trauma.
Without all of those other things.
This is a perfect woman. And the enemy could have used her in such a dynamic way to destroy the very thing that was a blessing to her and the man that she got.
So how much more are...
So here are our women who are even more potent
susceptible
and susceptible to the inclination and the attack of the enemy. Here is Genesis 3, when 16 or 15, that says, man, you should rule your woman. Take care of her. The rulership didn't mean that you must kick her and beat her or anything.
Not at all.
It meant...
Let's say that, pause and say that so we can hear it.
It never meant
at all.
Beating or kicking or anything. It says, man, you have left her alone when she was perfect. Know that she's not perfect.
You left her prone to the elements. Left her to be attacked by the enemy. You need to fix that.
Do it again. Protect her. Put your arm. Make sure she don't stay too far from you. Now, if you notice...
No, hold on. Say it again, you know. Because sometimes we think that the protection just means to protect you from the lion and the tiger and the person breaking into the house.
It is
but protection is right there.
But it's even from the woman's, from her very self. It's sometimes to protect her from her own self. Because every time you look at it, sometimes, what I know for a fact is that our women are so potent in their thoughts and creativity.
And we should say it's a necessary part of their nurturing.
No. But you see, God's design. God's design.
Listen,
for women,
man.
God's design for women was such that they were that part of man that will make decisions, help him to make decisions and create things. Now, that still exists in a woman today.
Because you can't create a baby without the man and the woman coming together in the creation process.
God's design was never flawed. At no point. And here is woman who, with all that potency, now flawed by the enemy and being used by him. What else could she do? If the perfect woman could basically...
In the perfect place.
At
the perfect time.
Could destroy...
If the enemy could sneak in and destroy that joy, destroy that happiness, mash up the happy Eden.
Used her in such a powerful way. The spirit of prophecy says, when the woman took the fruit and took it to her husband, she instantaneously became the agent of the devil at that point. So she was not that woman who... It was the same wife that he had.
No.
It was a different person now. No.
And understand the imagery that because sometimes if again going back to it's not attacking her, it's recognizing what is happening. And the same thing happened in the New Testament where Jesus turns to Peter and say, "Get thee behind me, Satan, because in this moment, even though you're my friend, in this moment, you are the agent of the devil, executing the devil's business." And so when we are able to recognize when the devil is using us, we're able to arrest that, stop it in its tracks, and turn our eyes back to Jesus.
The Bible did clearly say that we are all children of the devil. And that is by virtue of us being corrupted in the beginning. No, so let's not use the blame on the woman.
No.
So we're not blaming the woman. We could say that she could have used a little discretion and just walk away from the tree. But when she heard how much she would be like God,
it was appealing. Hey, It was appealing.
appealing
When she
is it?
saw that it
How
was
appealing?
good for food and it was good to make her wise,
Adam knew the same thing. Did it appeal to him?
it became, listen, right?
You know why? You know why it never
Why?
appealed to Adam? It never appealed to Adam because he already had it. Adam already had that because if you could look at what Jesus would have come to represent, the second Adam, the power that Jesus had, I would say to people, Adam would have had those powers. Only that sin wasn't around for him to heal anybody or raise the dead.
So
That's
let's,
how I'd see Adam being created as the image of God.
so let's bring it home now. So let's
what
bring
I
it
say.
home then. He didn't need it
No.
because he had it.
He had it, no.
Right? And so there's a difference in that it became attractive to her, but then something interesting happens as she's presenting it to him. She's presenting something to him that he doesn't need, but he's accepting. He's taking. And this is what I want to use to bring us back to 2023 now as men, when we're accepting this template, accepting this design for whatever reason. Because deep down, we feel inside that something is off with this masculinity that they're telling us to put on. It's not in alignment with what the designer placed on our hearts, with what he placed on our minds. But many of us are going along with it. We're accepting it.
But
And it is not
you know-
serving us.
Do you know that the man who is very rough, who is a warrior, who is the very dangerous man.
Yes.
When he is with his woman, he's a gentle soul.
Yes, man.
That love and that care, that protection for his family. When he picks up his child or his children, have his children around, they are just laughing and
Listen.
that is like a little teddy bear.
What's this now?
But for the assailant who comes to
Ah,
attack the
man.
family,
That man who must be capable of doing violence so that he can protect the family must also be able to uncloak himself, take off that garment and put
Here is-
on that one that allows him to cherish that little baby in his
Here is-
arms so he can really see the multifaceted father man that sits in the home as that protector, that provider, and that leader. And we're missing out on that opportunity.
Here's a question I'd ask you, Robert. Here's a question I'd ask you. Have you ever heard the statement, I have him wrap around my little finger? You ever hear the statement? That statement means that man is so in love with this woman.
He is beside himself, outside of himself.
So everything that she wants and she asking for, he will do it.
So bring
and
it-
she knows.
So bring it back to Eve now.
So-
So
no,
she's
no,
giving him this thing that he doesn't need.
Hold on, no. Let me share this video. So here's a woman who's saying, I want to talk about it. So I'm telling you about Adam's love. We're talking about Eve, the woman who gave Adam the fruit. And it's the same thing. So here is the woman have him wrap around my little finger. And I know the woman know this statement. It means that man love her. Now, when you see that happen, this is the same principle of Eve, the woman in the garden. She have Adam wrap around her
Yes.
little finger. Anything she say, he will do. Same principle. Every time you see, I will say this to the woman, every time you see a man who you can wrap around a little finger, that man possess the Adam's love. I don't think I'm that man. But well, I want to say that I'll try to be, right? But every time a woman says that I have this man wrap around my little finger, sees that man as the man who possess the original love that Adam would have in the Garden of Eden, that the woman in the garden would have experienced at that point. And then she sees him not as a person who loves her, but as a fool.
And so what we want to do is to manage that impression, manage that image, because what it did is it seemed attractive to Eve as she saw that it was good to make her wife. She saw that it was good to food, and she saw that it was good to present it to him. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. But what we've recognized from the record is that it hasn't translated into us. It introduced sin into the garden and has filtered down to all of us, causing all of us to have that trauma, all of us to have that negative image, all of us to be susceptible to sin. And so what we're saying is, even though we're far away from the garden, even though we're far away from the original design, what we're calling us back to
Yes.
is to get back to the designer,
Yes.
to get back to as close as we can to what that original design was, so that we can start maybe getting a glimpse of a pathway out of this. Because we started this show talking about men who are ending their own lives and giving up because they're seeing it is feeling hopeless, because we've taken on this new design and saying, let me try it out, and it is leading us to divorce, it is leading us to loss of children, it is leading us to prison, it is leading us to a host of things that is not serving us. And as we're doing those things, when we get to the end and realize I have given my life in service to a thing that is not helping me, it is not helping my wife, it is not helping my children, and it is doing a great injustice to even my grandchildren, some men decide to check out. But what we're saying is, don't do that. Don't do that right now. Right now is an opportunity where we're inviting men to pause. If you're thinking about giving up because it feels overwhelming, because it feels like too much, don't. Hold on. Hold on, because what we're doing here is we're creating a space where men can get back to that connection. Men can find that space where, rather than giving up, we can start finding sense in the nonsense.
Men need what we call positive role models.
Yes.
And we don't have many of those anymore. Most of the men we're modeling is the ones with earring and multiple tattoos all over.
And we don't even want to talk about them anymore. What we want to do is get to the place where we're talking about the solution. We want to get back to that teacher that those boys saw in the classroom.
Here's this piece. I want to link something.
Yes.
I want to link something quickly. Here is where we have this situation. We're talking about the woman in a sense. I want to go back to, I want to tell this story quickly, but I want to say this. For our women who believe that we would want to put an attack on a woman, it's not an attack. It is to recognize the potency of our woman.
Yeah.
I know the enemy is, I know how useful you are in the enemy's hands. Now, the home is the most important part of any society.
Can I say this? The image just jumped in my head. Nobody breaks into a dump to try to steal it. We break into banks and we break into museums to steal precious things. So if you're under the attack of the devil, it must mean something. Go on.
So here is where we have a problem. Our homes are under attack.
Yes.
And so our women are the keepers of the home. Where are women today? Keeping offices and other places. When you are keeping somewhere else, then the home is unattended.
The home is unattended, unguarded. The children's minds.
The children are not protected. And this is the most important valuables that you have, not the house.
Not the house.
Not the car, not the bank account. And so this is where the breakdown comes from. Now, what leads our women to this senseless trend? That they can't come off this treadmill. This what do they call it? The hamster wheel. Can't come off the hamster wheel now because it's a little bit fuzzy in the mind. You can't see it. But when the men are strongest in our society is strongest. The study came out to say that absent men from the home renders the society weak, or children becomes more violent, or into more problems, or suicide,
crime,
all of this. So we are
education, running away.
They're asking, where's the fathers in the home? Fatherless home produces. But they are saying, where are the fathers? They're gone. Wherever they are, whatever. But then, are the homes unattended is the question. Yes, they are attended. And they are well attended by the women. If you ask the question, are these homes properly run? Yes, women are doing an excellent job of taking care of the children. And we want to applaud our women. For with the absence of men, the women are doing a great job.
As best they can.
No. They're doing a good job. Great job. Here's the question. The answer came up, we don't need a man's story, came up right after that.
Yes.
Because this is what pumps that. Because they can take care of the home and everything.
Oh, gotcha.
And so we don't need a man's story cover because we can do it by ourselves. We can earn our own money and we can do this by ourselves. But here is the man who is, in this sense, I'll put him 0%. Because if the women are...
He's of zero value to the house. They're doing it all by themselves.
The woman is 100% right now. The man is 0%. And by him being absent from the home, that 0%, the society is being destroyed. Because the statistics says this. It's not something that I'm making up.
No.
It is what it says. But at that 0% called man in the home, of no value at all. And the society begins to get better. Immediately. It's like a rejuvenation of the entire system. All right, so we say this. We have a narrative or a system in place that have attacked our women psychologically. And I look at the wars that were fought back in the day that took our men to war and placed our women in the workplace with the excuse to give women that position of going to provide for the family. I would look at these things and say, men have been very ingenious. The enemy has been very ingenious. And so these wars that were being made were not necessarily made because they wanted to fight a war. But this action that we are now experiencing needed to happen.
It was a direct outcome.
It was a direct outcome of the war. So we are looking at people playing chess here. And they are using us as the pawns, playing the chess. We're on the chessboard and we're being moved around all over. Our women and our men are being moved around.
Yes.
I am
Both of us.
I am being moved
All
around.
of us.
All of us.
We're moved around like pawns.
So here what they did. They did this war, took the men, and I'm just putting it together. They made the war, took the men out of the workplace, put the women in the workplace, then send the feminist movement in there to empower the women to stay in the workplace and leave the home. Then set up education.
So when the men came back
when
from
the men
war,
came back, they had no jobs. They didn't necessarily want it, and then so the thing get mixed up right there. Then our children now are left unattended. No.
Our children are left unattended, and inflation is such that we need 2 checks.
No. we create an economical
Situation.
that now prevents the man from earning enough to take care of the family that he could have done
Yes,
before.
way back.
So we are just running it down quickly. We're just run it down, spiral it down. So the feminist movement brought our women to empower women to say the women need to be more masculine. They need to be more productive. They need to be able to come take care of them, help
while
themselves.
simultaneously telling the men that they need to be softer and weaker and more.
And so you're doing 2 things at the same time. You're building the women up to be men, and you're taking the women down.
The men
so
down.
when we look at the equality thing that we say, men and women are equal. And I'm gonna just say it straight I'm gonna say it like this: men and women will never be equal. And if that's the case, then you're a man. If you're a woman, and if you're a woman, you're a man. And that's how that equality look like.
And here's the thing, Elder Mikey, and I want to say this, right, because again, you've been on this fence for a long time. I'm new to the fence, and so this conversation between us can continue because it is a necessary conversation to have. But we have run out of time this evening, right? And we want
to this one.
Listen, and we want to bring this idea home again. We are not blaming the men who have found themselves fallen prey to this weak mindset, and we're not blaming the women who found themselves again prey to this deceptive image, but what we're looking at is the impact on our societies, and we're asking ourselves the question, what do we need to do to right this ship? And that is the conversation that we have every week right here on the Wrecking Trade.
I want to tell you this story, and we know we're out of time. I want to tell you the story quickly. There's this young man, and I want to tell you how important it is for men to be in the classroom. How important it is for men to be in the classroom. And so it is a deliberate act to take men out of the classroom. All right? We can't get into the story of that. But here is a young man who was one of the worst children that came to the school. Were in gangs and everything, right? And he has left school. He didn't leave school with anything at all. Had nothing to show for his name after leaving school. And now this young man is now required to get a recommendation after leaving school. Nobody in the school would write a recommendation because he was a very rude child. Bad. Rude. But you know what? He had an encounter with me, or several encounters with me while he was in the school. While he was in the school, he had to come to my office several occasions, and of course, for disciplinary reasons. I was the most hated at one point because of the fact that I was responsible for that aspect of the school, the learning curve, as I would put it. Here is the young man wanting a recommendation, and none of the teachers would write it for him. And he came down by the office and he saw me and he says, "Sir, could you write a recommendation for me?" I said, "For what?" He says, "You know what? I want to join the police force but I need a recommendation so I can join it. This was a young man who encountered me at a time in his life when he was at the worst stage of it, and he was now destined to become one of the known gangs within the area. And I could do an affiliation, but I don't want to link it to anything right now, right? And so they'd call themselves the Tired Gang at the time, with an affiliation as a subsidiary to another gang that was running the wider community. And so they were there, and he was a part of it. And I would attack them, literally the gang members, different ones at different times. People say, "Boy, if it's no, they're gonna kill you by now," you know. And I'm very much aware of the fact that I was in danger all the time. But then the trick about danger is this: if you are more dangerous than the person that you're dealing with, and they recognize you're dangerous as well, it's more unlikely for them to want to attack you or want to do something to you. So I think I consider myself very dangerous at that time. Not now. I don't think I'm dangerous anymore. But I think I was at that time. And that young man, I said, you know what, come. But I had seen improvement with him over the time when we have our encounters, because I had to discipline him many times. And when he came back for a recommendation, what I did was I said, you know what, come. I said, come with me. And I went down to the office and I said, Miss so-and-so, I want you to type a recommendation for me for this young man, and I'll sign it when he's finished. And so she typed the recommendation quickly for me, and I signed the recommendation. And he said, "Thank you, sir," and he went off on his merry way. I was here driving on, man, and months passed, or maybe, I don't know, maybe a year or more. I was driving in Kingston somewhere, and one of those down Duke Street, and I turned off on a road to get out of some traffic, and I want to see a police officer walk out with a fully riot gear and my M16 across his chest, and stop the car that I was driving up, and I was now shaking in my boots a little bit, you know. I don't know what this man stopping me for, you know, policeman stopping me. I feel a little unnerving, you know, a little bit, because it's, you know, dangerous,
intimidating,
and I felt that, and I'm gonna say this right here. I felt it, and when I drove up, he pulled down the young man, the officer pulled down the face mask that he had on, and said, "Sir, you all right?"
And it was the same young man.
The same young man. Let me tell you something. Up until this day, every time I think about that, you see, I still feel a little tear. And when I talk about men crying, and I say this, I will cry. I will have a tear coming.
And as you share that story, as you share that story, the image that came to mind is I remember watching Coach Carter and that movie Lean on Me, where you saw male leadership in the classroom and how that impacted young people. And what we're talking about here is creating that space for men, for young men, to make sure, whether it's in your home as a man, as a father, whatever it is that you need to do to be in that father's life, or if you are one of the few male teachers in the classrooms that are able to lean into, pour into that young man so that he can be shifted from that negative path onto a positive one. We're affirming and supporting men in this space. And in this 2023 International Men's Day celebration that is going to happen at the Marriott next week, what we're doing at the theme for this year is zero suicides.
Yes.
Zero suicides. We want to give men hope. We want to help them to realize that that thing that is clawing at their hearts, that thing that is clawing at their design is real, that was placed in them by a designer who knew what he was doing. And while it may feel like it is out of sorts with the society that we're living in, it is real. And we're calling men to that space. Let me put this
disclaimer right here. People are saying, why more men are not in the classroom? I will quickly tell them this. There's a time when men were not paid as much. Well, the pay was so small. And so this is a woman and a man in the classroom. Two people being paid the same salary. So if I make $5,000, female teacher make $5,000. She goes home to herself and maybe live by herself most of the time. And so she's taking care of herself. This man is a man who marries a woman, and now he has to take care of
the whole family on the one salary. And that's a whole other that's a whole other discussion. Hear me. That's a whole other discussion that will start a whole other show. That will start a whole other show when we look at, because you talked about it earlier in terms of the economic setup that has created that has created this setup where it doesn't seem to work with a man trying to be the head of the household and give his wife that joy of being able to submit, because there's just not enough. And so men had to take on greater risk that would take them away from the home. And there's a whole bunch of other things, right? And we're going to dig into that. We'd love to keep having this conversation, continue this conversation, but right here, because, it's getting late. We want to just bring this fine point on it. And this fine point is this. As we are from wherever you are, let us support each other. Let us lift up each other as men. Because unfortunately, Mikey, in our situations, many men don't get that kind of affirmation. Because as you said at the top of the show, right, guess what? If we fail, we're worthless. That's it. There's no middle ground. There's no safety net. You just don't make it and you're tossed out. And men feel hopeless. And what we're saying is, guess what? We've all been deceived. We've all been deceived and led astray. And right now, you as a man, as he said, even at zero, in that household, that son, that daughter needs you, needs your zero in order for them to be on the right path. So let us not give up. Let us not let go. Let us hold on and continue as we continue this conversation on The Wrecking Show. Final thoughts, Mikey, as we close tonight's show.
All right. Final thoughts would be, the home is the first place, the first community that builds the wider community.
Yeah.
So the home, your community, society.
Yeah.
A weak home, weak community.
Weak society.
No male presence, weak society, weak home, weak community.
Weak society. And so, let us be present. This has been The Wrecking Trade. It's me, Robert Lynch, here with Mikey G from Flashpoint. And we're just having this conversation. We're keeping the conversation going because we need to keep the light on. Thank you very much for our producer at the helm, Lady Elise, and our PA, Lady Janine, as they help us to keep the engines running, keep the trains going. We keep the light going on for you. Thank you for joining us. Join us next week.
Peace, love.
For men, to help them navigate the challenges that they face and provide hope for a brighter future. So tune in and join the conversation on The Wrecking Trade. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of men and boys in the Cayman Islands. Welcome to The Wrecking Trade, the radio show that provides a platform for a deeper understanding of issues affecting men in the Cayman Islands. Join us as we explore the low enrollment of men and boys in college classrooms, the absence of men in the church, and the absence of fathers in the home. Join the conversation